Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and welcome to today's session. How are you doing? I pray that all is well with you and your families at this time. So one of the most powerful virtues or character building qualities that a person can ever develop is the quality of being equipoised, being composed and restrained under pressure. And this is the defining feature that even in the material world can award one a higher level of occupation as a manager or as a regional manager or as a director. We know this for a fact that the higher you go, the more pressure you'll have to endure. So we're seeing that this quality of being equipoised, being balanced, being composed under pressure is not something we can learn from a textbook. It can only be experienced and understood under the circumstance. When one is in that situation and one has the state of mind, then one can develop this quality of resilience, being composed, being equipoised under the pressure of life. It's not an easy one, but we see as we're studying Bhagavad Gita, it's something that Krishna is advocating for life. Krishna is advocating this to Arjuna, that if you're going to understand and experience life in a very balanced way, then you have to be equipoised. If you're not equipoised in state of mind and state of heart, then you're not going to be able to go through life. This is a very powerful quality that one can develop. And as we're studying the Bhagavad Gita, we're seeing that Krishna is trying to guide Arjuna in his understanding of what is life and in what is the understanding of life from the spiritual platform. So we have two different dimensions here. One is the material understanding and the other is the spiritual absolute understanding from Krishna. And as Krishna is gradually, with very careful and caring suggestions, he's trying to make Arjuna understand his situation and understand and see a higher perspective of life. So as we're studying that from Bhagavad Gita today, chapter 2, verse number 48. Yogastaha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhaya siddhayoh samo bhutva Shamatvam yoga uchyate. Translation: perform your duty equipoised, O Arjuna. So we can see that this is something that Krishna is stressing on, that Arjun, that if you want to experience balance in thought and mind and heart, then you're going to have to perfect this quality of being equipoised. If you're going to break, if you're going to shatter under every circumstance that nature throws at you, be it in health, be it in finance, in wealth, be it in job, in occupation, be it in family, be it in social, there's so many aspects of life, and all of them are built on this fragile platform of material nature. So if you don't develop this quality of being equipoised, you're not going to be able to stabilize your life. And we see this in nature also, right? If we study nature, nature works in a system of homeostasis. Everything in nature works in balance. This is the same principle. So on the physical level, it's homeostasis, and on the subtle and spiritual level, it's equipoised. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that the way you have conducted your life, Arjun, it's not according to nature. You see nature? Nature is very balanced. It's equipoised. Everything works in harmony. It's called homeostasis. So nature has learned to develop this, and you're a big Kshatriya, you're a big warrior. You haven't learned to develop this? He's telling Arjuna, if you want that state of equilibrium, which you're hankering for right now, then you're going to have to develop this quality of being equipoised. And it's not a new concept to our study, because way back in 2.14, in fact, it's the first thing he instructed Arjuna. Matra sparsha tu kaunteya sitoshna sukadukada agama payano nityastams tatikshva bharata. So Arjun, you have to be composed in cold and heat, which is the external feature, and happiness and distress, which is an internal feature. So he's saying you have to be composed both in body and mind. If you are not composed in body and mind, there's no question of advancing on a higher platform of reality. There's no question of advancing in spiritual development. So think about this. The first thing Krishna told Arjuna, Tam statiksva Bharata. Oh, son of Bharata, you are coming in a line where everybody has developed this quality. And now you have that name and you are showing such weakness? Don't do this to yourself, and also don't do this to them. Oh, son of Bharata, oh Arjuna, you're coming in a great line. Honor these great people, these Raja Rishis, and in doing that, you'll also honor yourself. So he goes on, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. So he says this is the secret, that when you're developing on the spiritual platform, the mindset of a practitioner is different from the mindset of a materialistic person. Materialistic person sees good and bad because his mind is soaked in duality. He only sees the world in duality and he only understands the world in duality. But a spiritual person is seeing the world from spirituality, not from duality. So when he's studying the world, it has a different set of principles. And the first guiding principle is giving up all attachment for success and failure. Because success and failure is relative. What is success for you is failure for me. And what is failure for me is success for you. So it's relative. And if you look at any material achievement, it has an equal portion of success and failure. It has an equal portion of good and bad. No matter what aspect of material nature you look at, 50% of it is negative and 50% of it is positive. If you just assess it close enough, you'll see that this thing, even if it gives you happiness or even if it's giving you distress, 50% of it is designed for happiness and 50% of it is designed for suffering. So if everything in life works on this mechanism of 50-50 or the dual mechanism, then if we want peace, then it behooves us to develop the quality of equilibrium. Otherwise, we're going to be swayed by the good or the bad. And the result of that is that even the good will create suffering and even the bad will create suffering. So if we equipoised, we can objectively observe. So he goes on. Such equanimity is called yoga. So this is a very powerful thing, because when you start understanding the concept of being equipoised, then you first start to use determination as your foundation, as your strength. But we know determination doesn't last long. If the mind is not set in that way or reset in that way, then determination is not going to last long. So although enthusiasm starts by being determined, but if you connect it as yoga, this is what Krishna is saying today, connect it as yoga. Do it for me. Do it for me. When you have a purpose behind your action, and if that purpose is the Supreme Being, and if that purpose is motivated to please the Supreme Being, then what is your limitation? What is your endurance? Nothing can be an obstacle. Nothing can be a limiter. Everything is seen as an opportunity to deepen the relationship. And why is that? Because you have your why. You have your reason why you're doing it. And the reason is because you will please the Supreme Being. And once you found that connection, there is nothing more satisfying than that. There is nothing in matter that can give you a sense of satisfaction than developing this deep intimacy relationship between the Supreme Lord and yourself. Even though things may not have succeeded outside, even though things look oblique outside, but internally that relationship is cultivated because you did it out of love. Your motivation is love. Your motivation is not success or failure. And once that's established from the level of the soul, wow, life has a complete different experience. Completely. There is nothing in the material world that can compare to that experience. Nothing. So he goes on by starting the purport. Krishna tells Arjuna that he should act in yoga. And what is that yoga? So this concept of yoga, and you remember from our definitions that yoga means to connect. To connect what? To connect consciousness at the level of the soul to the spiritual platform. That is yoga. And we learnt if yoga is not applied, then karma is simply karma. But when you add yoga, then it becomes karma yoga. Jnana, knowledge is simply knowledge. But when you add yoga, it becomes jnana yoga. And attachment in the material world is simply attachment. But when it adds yoga to it, to the spiritual platform, it becomes bhakti, devotional attachment or love. So in today's context, what does he mean by yoga? Let's see. Srila Prabhupada says here, yoga means to concentrate the mind upon the Supreme by controlling the ever-disturbing senses. So yoga here is the attempt to control the mind. And we know by the nature of the mind, the five senses are connected to the mind. So constantly 24 hours, the mind is being agitated with the five senses. Constantly, whatever it sees, whatever it hears, whatever it smells, tastes, touch, it's constantly being agitated outside by the senses and inside from the past memories of the previous lives. So millions of impressions are surfacing in the mind and it's always agitated and disturbed. Therefore, we have to move ourselves back a bit. Move ourselves back from the mind. See it for what's happening. See it for what it's doing. See it for the way it's behaving. And if you move back a bit, you'll be able to see what the mind is doing and you'll be able to choose properly what you want it to do. So he goes on. And who is the Supreme? The Supreme is the Lord. And because he himself is telling Arjuna to fight, Arjuna has nothing to do with the results of the fight. Gain or victory is Krishna's concern. Arjuna is simply advised to act according to the dictation of Krishna. Yes. So when you connect with yoga, because you're not getting the result of acting, remember it's not a fruitive result. Now it's yoga. It means connecting to the Supreme, or you're working under the dictates of the Supreme Being. So when you're acting in that way, it's not fruitive anymore. And therefore, there's no loss or gain. You are just doing it to please the Supreme Person. And once that is a motivation, then your foundation, then your fuel is love. Then the fuel that you're driven on is love. It's simply to please. It's simply to give, not to get. It's simply to give and serve the Supreme Being. And by the nature of love, which is reciprocal, He'll take care of every part of your life. He'll take care of your material needs. He'll take care of your monetary needs. He'll take care of your social needs. He'll take care of your physical needs, your health. He'll take care of every part of your life. If you start to live your life in obedience to the Supreme Lord, then your whole life becomes spiritualized. That becomes yoga. Then whatever he does is governed by the Supreme Principle. It's not governed from his mind and it's not enjoyed at the physical level. He is experiencing satisfaction, which is a deeper sense of fulfillment than what the senses can give you. So on all levels, he's a much more elevated being. He's just not another human being on this planet. So he goes on. The following of Krishna's dictation is real yoga. And this is practiced in the process called Krishna consciousness. So to follow the spiritual platform or the governance from there, that is called yoga. And the process of doing that we described before is called Krishna consciousness. That is the process of doing the yoga, of execution. By Krishna consciousness only can one give up the sense of proprietorship. One has to become the servant of Krishna or the servant of Krishna. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 13.80. So we can see a complete different state of being, a different state of mind or heart from when we first started studying through the Bhagavad Gita. Now the motivation is to please the Supreme Lord. Whether the result is good or bad, just like in this case, Arjuna has been asked to fight because he's a Kshatriya. He's been asked to do this as a yoga. But we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's the story of Priyavrata Maharaj, who was wanting to be a sannyasi. He did not want to get involved in the kingdom as a king. He wanted to be a renunciate. But he was asked to come back and be a king. So he gave up that principle because of this emergency. And you remember yesterday we were describing that in prescribed duty there are 3 divisions, and one of them was emergency. So he took on this emergency, although he wanted to do something else, but he followed the governance of the Supreme Being, because this what was needed. So you can see the difference in consciousness, that you may have a certain proclivity or inclination, but when it comes to serving the Supreme Being and serving on the spiritual platform, no matter what is required, you will do. Why? Because the motivation is based on love, not on result. The motivation is on love. So he goes on here. That is the right way to discharge duty in Krishna consciousness, which alone can help one to act in yoga. So you see, this is the way to do duty. That one can do duty from the material platform, but that will be motivated by determination or by selfishness. And that can go on for a while, but it cannot last. If you want lasting duty, then you have to connect your consciousness to the spiritual platform. And as soon as one does that, that becomes yoga. So he goes on. Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and as such, he is participating in the Van Ashram Dharma institution. So yesterday's verse we were talking about action or work and how to work. Karmadi evaste kareste ma phalasu kadachana ma karma phala hetur bur mate sango swakarmani. That you are entitled to your duty, but you are not entitled to the results of your action. So the concept of duty or work is very profound. So in order to be effective, it has to have a certain framework. So what is the framework of action or duty? It's done within the Van Ashram system. You remember we covered this earlier on as well, that under these 4 categories of human nature, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras. So under their nature, work is done. A Brahmana will do a different kind of work, Kshatriya a different kind of work, Vaishya different kind of work, and Sudra different kind of work. So under their nature they will act in a certain way. So unless one is aware of this Varnashram system, one will do one's work capriciously. And we learnt yesterday that that is one of the ways in which work is done. That means it's done without understanding of Varnashram. But when one acts in understanding of Varnashram, then that becomes yoga. So he goes on. It is said in the Vishnu Purana that in the Varnashrama Dharma, the whole aim is to satisfy Vishnu. No one should satisfy himself, as it is the rule in the material world. So earlier on, Srila Prabhupada was talking about the proprietor, knowing that who is the owner of everything. And this is Ishyavasya, the Ishyavasya principle. Who is the supreme proprietor? And this is what Isa Upanishad is mainly about. Isa Upanishad is who is Isha, the supreme controller or the supreme proprietor. And by understanding that you are connecting with yoga to the supreme being, then in that way you understand you are part of a dynamic, and there are different variables that facilitate you getting your quota. And because you're connecting in yoga, because you're connecting to the spiritual platform, and that is done out of love, therefore that supreme being then out of love begins to take care of you, not out of duty. Because he's taking care of everything in this material world out of duty. But when one is serving in the mood of yoga, in the mood of love, then he also reciprocates in the mood of love. And if you're in that person's custody, then what is there to worry about? What is there you have to worry about? He's doing everything. Does a little child worry about food, where the water is coming from, where the food is coming from? Even the mother has to worry whether you ate or not. Even mother up to now worries whether you ate or not. First question when you phone, have you eaten what you ate? Fellow is big like an elephant, bulging on all sides, and mother wants to know, you ate what you ate? This is love. This is the way, the reciprocation of love. Even your bodily needs on the bodily level become a concern for the Supreme Being. So if that person is concerned about your welfare and your well-being, what are you worried about? What are you concerned about? Don't be concerned. Don't be worried. This is the transcendental platform. He will take care and He will do whatever is necessary. Ye yata mam prapadyante tamsta chaivam bhajamyaham mama vartmana vartante manusapartha sarvasaha. As they surrender unto me, I take care accordingly. If they're doing with love, I'll give love back and I'll reciprocate. So this is a very deep, loving exchange now between the soul and the spiritual platform. So he concludes here, no one should satisfy himself as is the rule in the material world, but one should satisfy Krishna. So unless one satisfies Krishna, one cannot correctly observe the principles of the Varnashram Dharma. So Prabhupada is quoting the Vishnu Purana, that once you understand who is the proprietor of all this creation, who is the creator of all of this, then you've discovered who is the supreme proprietor, who is the owner of all this creation. And then if you take anything from here without asking permission, that's called stealing. That's called stealing. So even in basic etiquette, if you do yoga just to be a good person, fantastic if that's your motivation. But if we take anything from this material world without offering it to the Supreme Being, for two reasons, to sanctify or purify it and for gratitude. Unless those two things are there, there's not going to be a loving exchange. It's going to be a bartering system. I take from here the boga, I offer it to you, you stamp it, prasadam, and send it back. It's not a bargaining system, it's an exchange of love, that somebody has provided something that I need. And we've seen that with this COVID epidemic, right? Just a simple thing like air, just a simple thing like breathing air became a gift from God. Every breath that a COVID patient took was like a gift from God. So when we start with the basic things in life, like air, water, food, family, shelter, friends, home, occupation, when we start to appreciate all these things every day, we don't take it for granted, that develops a very deep consciousness of gratitude. So he concludes here, indirectly Arjuna was advised to act as Krishna told him. So yesterday we were mentioning that you're either listening to the mind or you're listening to the guru, which is a representative of the spiritual platform. So you're either listening to one of the two, but you're listening to someone. Whatever decisions you make, you have listened to someone. Therefore, it has consequences. So if you have consequences on the material platform which are binding, why not choose the consequences on the spiritual platform which is liberating?